Good afternoon. This is the Delaware County Interactive Gaming Revenue Authority monthly meeting, November 18th, 2021, 2 p.m. I call this meeting to order at 2 o'clock p.m. Please join me in rising to Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, can we have a roll call of the members?
Okay, I see Stefan,
Here.
Ron, Paul, Francis, and our
Here.
solicitor, Frank.
Thank you, thank you. At this time, I will entertain any motions. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I should have mentioned before we did that, there is a mistake on the agenda. We have a motion to approve the minutes of the October 2021 decision meeting, not the September 2021 decision meeting. So I apologize. The next item on the agenda is public comment concerning the agenda. Are there any public comments concerning the agenda? All right, then we will proceed. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the October 2021 DeSigra meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved.
I'm sorry, I meant to get your minute earlier. This is just the one to drop off the correspondence.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You can scan all of it, I figured I'd give you the hard copy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thanks.
Sure. All right, at this time, we have a special presentation from the Delaware County Planning Department concerning multimodal projects with Rebecca Ross and Kathy Spar. We had an opportunity, Stefan and I had an opportunity to
Thank you.
meet with them, I believe it was last month? Yeah, last month.
Sounds
Just for an initial introduction, and I invited them to come today to provide a more thorough introduction and overview of these projects to the rest of the authority. So thank you for joining us.
Great, sure. Yeah, thank you again, Paul, for inviting us. I'm Rebecca Ross, a principal planner with Delaware County Planning Department, and we wanted to talk about some of these projects, but for your general knowledge, we want to make sure you know who we are at the Planning Department, what we do in general, and how we can possibly serve as a resource to you all for the types of projects you might be interested in funding down the road. So the first page of this little presentation has our sort of staff schematic. We are a department of the county government. So currently we report to Francine Locke, the sustainability director, who, sort of reports us to county council. So we currently are in the search for a planning director. Our interim director is Tom Schaefer. And we have 6 functional sections that are served by our administrative staff. And those are community and regional planning, environmental planning, historic preservation planning, subdivision and plan review, transportation planning, trails and open space planning, and we have a GIS, which is Geographic Informational Services section that does mapping and data collection.
So our mission is to promote the sound development and redevelopment of the county through the application of contemporary planning principles and smart growth concepts while maintaining and enhancing the cultural, economic, and environmental livability of the county. I'd also like to point out the American Planning Association, whose mission we follow, also is looking to help underserved communities. And so that is something that our planning department also actively focuses on, how we can improve the lives of the individuals who live and work in our underserved communities here in Delaware County.
And one of the ways that on the next page that we support our mission is the Delaware County 2035 County Comprehensive Plan. And this schematic is here because our comprehensive plan is a little bit of a different animal. It is a sort of an umbrella term that is made up of a land use framework plan that was passed in 2013 to kind of get our initial policies on the books. And then subsequently, from 2015 through last year, we adopted a series of subject-specific component plans that really go further into depth as far as what our policies and our priority projects are, both for the county to undertake and for us to recommend to municipalities for ways to improve the county. And each of those have goals and more refined objectives and then action items. So I encourage all of you to visit our website and to take a look at this document. Again, for your own edification and as you're carrying out this goal, that might help you understand, some of the types of things that we want to work on and hope to work on. So going on the next page, we'll go through those at least 6 of the functional planning areas that I mentioned on that earlier slide. So my primary area of focus is community and regional planning. So we're the planners on the staff that oversaw the development of that comprehensive plan progress, at least the main sort of core of it, while the different sections handled more their own detailed component plans. We work a lot of times with municipalities to craft their zoning or to help them on comprehensive plans, much the same way a planning consultant would do. We look at special studies, one of which I'll mention to you at the end as a potential project, and produce things like model ordinances and guides. And then we work with the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, which is our regional transportation and planning organization that does a lot of projects throughout the 5-county region around Philadelphia. So we try to kind of keep things focused on a broader, to keep broader patterns and projects in our minds as we assist our individual communities.
So I am part of the transportation planning section. I'm a senior transportation planner in the transportation section, and we focus on everything from roads to pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure to public transit. And we work very closely with PennDOT, SEPTA, and again, the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, also known as DVRPC. DVRPC is our metropolitan planning organization, and you have to receive federal funds. You have to have a metropolitan planning organization. So they coordinate all the federal funds throughout our region. And so we collaborate a lot with them on the distribution of federal funds towards projects in Delaware County. And to help us with that, we have created what we are calling a Transportation Improvement Inventory, which is a TII. The first iteration of that was in 2018 to 2019. When I came on in April of 2020, 2021, pandemic brain there on the time frame. I took over the management of that, and I'm getting ready to wrap up the 2020 and 2021 version, which will bring both of them together. And it's going to be a very cool interactive map, and I would actually love to come back and present that to you guys and show you how you can use it to find multimodal projects going forward. So that's one of our really great plans. We're also working, hopefully, on doing an active transportation plan going forward, which will focus on human-powered transport. and access to public transportation. So those are some of the things that we work on.
Yeah. So I'm going to go really quickly through, we don't have representatives from all of our sections, but I'll mention a couple of other things. So our environmental planners have a lot of sort of state and federally mandated tasks and assignments for reviewing stormwater and floodplain plans, sewer modules, and then working collaboratively with some multi-municipal or regional groups that handle environmental planning. Then we have a separate trails and open space planning section that really focuses on connecting the counties, creating a primary trail network in the county, and working with the Parks and Recreation to inventory and make plans for improvements to parks. And most recently, you may have seen that the county issued the Greenways Grant Program, where we were able to issue monies to a lot of communities to do land acquisition for parks or for open space protection, to do trails or park improvement projects throughout the county, connecting these different trails. So that was really kind of a feather in our cap. That was something we were really happy to do. We have a historic preservation planning section that is building an inventory of historic resources. We make sure that our plans coming in for our subdivision and land review process are, not going to negatively affect or minimizing negative effects on historic resources, and work with communities to maybe pass historic districts and that kind of thing. And then finally, our subdivision and plan review section works with our county planning commission, another council-appointed body that is required by the state to provide commentary and review on all land use decisions that come through, and then hand it off to the municipality for their final decision. So we serve as the staff that provide them with sort of the expert opinion for them to be able to make their final decisions. So as Kathy mentioned earlier, we did provide a list of some projects of interest that are kind of the things that we talked to Paul and Stefan about when we had our online conversation. So we wanted to bring those to you and describe a little bit more about them. One that I'll start with is the Chester Pike Corridor Master Plan. So if you're not aware, there is a nonprofit group formed by Ridley Park, Prospect Park, Norwood, Glen Olden, and Sharon Hill, along Route 13 or Chester Pike. So they've formed a nonprofit, and they're working collaboratively to fund or to plan for different improvement projects and economic development projects and road improvement projects for that corridor. They received a grant from the state that is paying for the planning department to write a master plan. So we're in the middle of doing that. We hope to produce that early in 2022, whatever year is coming. And that will include, like I said, all the types of things like streetscape and beautification types of things, as well as business mix and economic development, road safety, and pedestrian and bicycle friendliness, and that kind of assessment. So that's ongoing. I do have a handout related to the plan development with the Chester Pike Vision, if any of you want to take a look at that. But that's one I think that has a lot of smaller projects. They have leveraged some funding from Senators Williams and Carney, who represent there's two different senatorial districts along those municipalities. So they have gotten some buy-in from their local reps, and it's a really great collaboration. So I think that might be something you could possibly consider for looking at for projects if that's coming up.
So I did, even though the transportation improvements inventory is not ready to unveil yet, I did include some projects that we've gathered from that. One would be the Marcus Hook East Coast Greenway connector. My gosh, that's a mouthful. So I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the East Coast Greenway down Route 291, and what Marcus Hook would like to do is create a pathway down Penn Avenue to their waterfront. And so that's one project that I think would be a really great project for Marcus Hook. And then also the engineer for Glen Olden and Collindale wants to work on streetscaping along McDade Boulevard. So that would also be another project that would improve the look along two municipalities that are adjacent to one another. We also had some unfunded Delco Greenways projects that we added to the list. Sharon Hill was proposing a trail that did not get approved in this round of funding. And they're also part of the Eastern Delaware County Stormwater Collaborative Project. So what they were hoping to do would also help some stormwater issues there. And then Millbourne is also looking to do a pathway along the Cobb's Creek to connect to the Cobb's Creek Parkway and Pass. So those were a couple other ones. We tried to focus on communities that are underserved communities to put in front of you guys, because we know from our conversation with Stefan and Paul that that's something that you're interested in.
So that's pretty much it for us. If you have any questions, I'll love to pass these out to you, but first, and our contact information is on there. So again, anybody feel free to reach out to us with any specific questions or follow-up, but any questions right away?
Is there a reason, I mean, these are all great projects, really important. Hopefully some of them will attract some of the new infrastructure dollars that are coming down the pike. Is there a reason that the efforts to improve 291 in Chester are not included, the work the Riverfront Alliance is doing with the city of Chester?
So that project along Chester is actually on the Transportation Improvements Program, which is what comes under the federal dollars. So we're currently working on getting funding through federal monies. That project is gonna cost multiples of millions of dollars to complete.
Sure.
So we're pursuing it through that, since the federal funds have come a bigger bang.
Okay. And is there, so that's good to hear, and I hear about a little bit about that through the Riverfront Alliance. Is there a reason these other projects would not be eligible for similar funds?
So some of them aren't big enough for federal funds. The grant work that comes along with federal funds is exhaustive, and so you kind of have to make the dollars worth the effort, if that makes sense. So you're looking, when you go after federal funds, you're looking for projects that are over $1 million, generally speaking. Additionally, getting on the tip is easier said than done, because there's the Transportation Improvement Program has to be constrained, and there's only so many federal dollars to go around. So when we look at projects, we have to consider not just the needs of Delaware County, but the needs of the other counties that are within the Metropolitan Planning Organization also have to be accounted for. So it becomes very complex and classically bureaucratic in nature.
And another thing that we mentioned to Paul and Stefan was that a lot of the grants that we work with, that we pursue for our communities, require match dollars. And there are a lot of times with federal, and also very often with state, you can't sort of match like with like.
Yeah.
So in communities where they're, sort of straining to balance budgets, it's, they'll seek funding from private organizations. A lot of private organizations have very, very, very specific or narrow, sort of areas of focus that they support. So that can be challenging. In the past, the county, back in the early 2000s, the county had a revitalization program where we the county was able to provide funds to be match programs for, to be match funds for grants that were, provided unencumbered, funds that could benefit communities. So that's another reason that we mentioned some of these projects. Some of them do, as I said, Chester Pike has been pursuing many, many grants. Some of the things they want are things like a lot of grants fund engineering work or planning work, but not always the physical improvements, and not always if they're, sort of on the lighter side, like planters or, benches and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So in some cases, we were thinking of bringing to you, since, we understand you're still evolving your grant process or your funding process. But, one thing you could consider is that these, might be like, low-hanging fruit, little easy ticket items that could help, move communities that have been doing planning towards their larger goals, towards getting their more major projects on the tip, on the Transportation Improvement Program, and getting those federal funds, but being able to show the community that there is investment and that there is progress and forward motion.
Yeah, and the other thing, to get on the tip, a lot of, one of the things they look for is whether planning has actually been done in a community. So has there been a feasibility study done? Is it even on the radar of the community at all? And some of the communities don't have the ability to do the planning that they're looking for. They just don't have the money, or they don't have the personnel to complete that. Act 47 municipalities are ones where they're not going to be able to do some of these because they don't have the matching money to do it. And so it's kind of, it kind of ends up leaving people in a rock and a hard spot, so to speak, where they might want to do something, but they just simply can't because of the constraints of government regulations.
So how much money are we talking about? For instance, regarding the two connectors, the Marcus Hook and the Melbourne connectors. What's the total amount, and what is the amount that they need to sort of, that you think our dollars could help get them off the dime?
So I think for the Milbourne Connector project, that's more of a planning project, that they want to look at the planning of that. And the Marcus Hook one would need planning for that as well.
And
my guess is, in the end, the Marcus Hook one will probably end up being pretty expensive, because I believe there's an at-grade crossing that would need to be addressed in that. The unfortunate thing is that a lot of these projects are just unbelievably more expensive than one would
Sure,
think.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I was looking at pricing things out yesterday, and when a foot of concrete can be as expensive as $410, and you want to put in a mile of sidewalk, that adds up. And so it's just very daunting, really. But these communities could benefit so much from it.
And I think we can get you more specific numbers on all these projects. That is something we have. As we mentioned, some of the proposed projects applied for these Greenway grants. That they ended up with funding 9 million worth, and that was over the original 7 million cap that they had, because there was such demand. But so because of that, we have the, proposals and the dollar amounts, so we should be able to get you that information. And again, similar with the Chester Pike corridor projects, they've been applying for many grants, so they have some engineered specs for various types of things. They've we can pull all that together and definitely send you those for anything that you think you might be interested in, and just to
Right.
give you an idea of the kind of range.
Additionally, some of these projects are also competitive when they apply for federal funding. So right now, there's a transportation set-aside that's a competitive grant that's happening right now. And I know that the city of Chester applied for a Highland Avenue connection, but they're competing with, I forget how many other projects. So whether they get it, I don't know. Hopefully we'll know soon. But if they don't, they will then we will have the information on the monies needed because they had to provide that information to submit for it. So those are other things to consider. But I think for a lot of the underserved communities, what they're lacking is the money to do the planning first, and then the money to actually put shovels in the ground. So,
Or a match that's
right,
required.
Right,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly, or the
yeah.
match. So, I'm not really sure if you guys are interested in helping fund the planning projects that would get the shovels in the ground, or if you're just looking to actually get the shovels in the ground, or what your options are. But these are kind of all of the steps and hurdles that we need to go through to help improve these communities.
Right, we just want to this is from our perspective
Right,
at the
right.
planning department, and this is why we hope possibly moving forward, we can be a resource for you guys for potential projects or to vet projects that come across your desk.
Ask another question.
Any other questions, Stefan or Ron?
No.
I have a couple questions. Chester Pike, I'm seeing some municipalities that are missing. I believe Crumlin, Eddystone, Darby, and Yaden. And my colleague Stefan told me that it's not called Chester Pike in the city of Chester, so I guess that's why it's not.
Right, yeah. So Eddystone, I believe, did not, was given the option and was not interested in participating.
Okay.
Same thing with Ridley Township, which does border on one side.
Oh, really? Township too?
And
Okay.
That's Crumlin.
Fullcroft
Crumlin.
is that small gap you see between Glenolden and Sharon Hill, and again, possibly due to, because there is a financial contribution,
Okay.
since it's a nonprofit, the municipalities were, able to opt in or opt out. I think Eddystone was kind of curious, interested. As to why it doesn't extend into Darby, I'm not sure if Darby, again, was offered that. And does it extend all the way into Yaden, or does it meet up with McDade at some point and they sort of combine?
Yeah, I think it's
I think they
Darby, then Yaden.
But I don't
Darby,
think
then Yaden.
And then it crosses into Philadelphia.
Absolutely. The primary driver behind it was membership in this nonprofit. And so that option was offered. And then since the nonprofit was the lead applicant for the
Right.
grant funding that procured the funds that are covering the planning department, developing the plan, that's why the plan is focused primarily in that area.
Okay.
However, we are hoping that one outcome of the plan is to sell the greater, benefit
Yes.
of belonging to the nonprofit
Right.
and, the sort of, outcomes it generates that may convince some of those bordering and outlying municipalities to want to participate as well to get some outcomes.
All right, and my other question is, well, I guess I have two questions. The streetscaping in Glenolden and Collingdale is among two municipalities, correct? But the Marcus Hook, Sharon Hill, and Milburn are just one single municipality.
Yes.
Okay. And I guess my last question is, the Chester Pike has a nonprofit entity formed. The Marcus Hook, Glen Olden, Collingdale, Sharon Hill, and Milburn, if we did any funding, would that have to go directly to that municipality because they don't have a
Right,
nonprofit
likely,
Yeah.
right, it would
Yeah.
likely go directly to
Yes,
the municipal
Okay.
yeah.
group. I don't know of any.
So those were put in by separate township engineers. So when we collected the data for the TII, we reached out to the municipalities and asked them if there were any transportation projects that they were looking to get completed.
Okay.
That outreach was before I was here, and I worked on some more after I got here, because I came with some contacts. So I was able to grab up a few more municipalities and participating. So they were put in by them. And in some cases, because the township engineer submitted it, they actually submitted plans and what they had in mind for those projects. So when the TII is unveiled, what you'll be able to do is go to an interactive map that divides the projects into different categories, into pedestrian and bike, road, transit, and bridges, which I'm pretty sure you guys aren't interested in fixing bridges, but and you'll be able to go look around at the different projects, click on them, and all the information that we have available to us will be located there. So what the project is looking to do, if we have a cost estimate, that'll be there. If there are any planning documents, those will be there and available to review, and pictures of the site will also be there to review. So we're hoping to make it something that's very usable and helps people determine where these projects are in the process of getting completed.
Okay. And I guess I have one last question. What's the economic benefit for something such as a Chester Pike corridor and the streetscaping versus these other ones that are more transportation, natural environment type things, like the Marcus Hook, Sharon Hill, and the Milburn Cops Creek?
Yeah,
Could you-
well,
what's the economic benefit to
We
those?
do actually have forthcoming a study called the Return on Environment, which will provide, is being undertaken by our environmental and open space and trails planners and a consultant, which will look more in depth at the quantifiable economic benefit of things like access to open space and green space. So hopefully, I don't think either of us are directly involved in that. But hopefully that can provide some, maybe more justification for that kind of thing. But I think in general, we just look at things like, you can usually look at things like property values, maybe cars off the road if people are able to commute via trail rather than, driving and just kind of things like that. So that's a general answer.
I think, some projects like trails have shown an increase in property values. I know it's somewhat anecdotal, but the Wawa by the Radnor Trail has a lot of people buying coffee before they hit the trail, right? You hear stories about realtors when they're selling a home that's near the trail. Oh, and the Radnor Trail is located here, George Needles, who's the township manager for Upper Chichester, they have done some projects. They got CDBG grants for some improvements along Johnson Avenue in Upper Chichester, and they're already like advertising that, like it's an up and coming neighborhood is how they're advertising it. So I think it helps that way. Also, from a stormwater management perspective, when we address our environment and address stormwater management issues, we're saving money because we're not going to have to go in and fix areas that were flooded. So I think some of it is more like looking to the future on money that we don't have to spend in the future because we address the issue now. And as far as transportation, I mean, anything we can do to get people off the roads saves us money on wear and tear on the roads. It improves our health because we're being more active and we're also not putting more pollution into the air, which in some communities is a really big issue as far as health outcomes go. So I think, all of these things have an economic value that overflows into other aspects of our lives.
Thank you.
Ask one more
Yeah,
question.
go ahead.
Are there other authorities or entities that you're approaching in the same way you're approaching us?
I mean, other than our general work, where we, work collaboratively with, to the extent that we pursue grant opportunities when we see them. I think one reason, as we expressed to Paul and Stefan when we talked to them individually, was that this seems like a potential new funding source. We just want to be able to put ourselves before you and make a case for some of the types of projects that we work on for you to consider that these are things that we, may already have on the tip, may already be applying to the state DCED for, or, that kind of thing. Just to let you know that, there may be opportunities that we know of for sort of filling in the gaps on some of the projects we work on. So short answer, no, this is sort of a unique presentation to you all. But again, we in general, we do though like to present when we have the opportunity. For example, the Sustainability Commission that I believe is meeting here tonight in this meeting room, when they formed, we did present ourselves as a department and what we've worked on in the past relating to sustainability. So we're always ready to advocate for the good work that the planning department is doing as a function of Delaware County government, and propose ways that we can tie in and collaborate with new organizations and entities.
I think that you guys are a really unique authority in that money just generally isn't out there. And so you guys are in a really unique and amazing position to be able to really positively impact communities in Delaware County in a way that other funding is not. A lot of the times the other funding goes through really bureaucratic ways of the federal government or even the state government, or it's a competitive process, as where I think you guys just have a very unique opportunity. And I think it's very exciting, and I hope that we get to work with you some more.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the presentation and the
Sure.
detailed information you provided. Thank you very much.
Give you guys these before but otherwise, again, thank you so much for listening to our
Sure.
presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks for your work.
Sure.
Thanks very
I
much,
hope
Rebecca.
we weren't too boring.
Very detailed, very good information. So thank you. And the reason I asked them to come is when we discussed our original ordinance and our bylaws, and we created our mission statement, one of the things we have in our mission statement is economic and community development. And I think I brought up multimodal projects when we were having that discussion. So this might be something that we can consider. So we'll keep it on the docket. All right, so let's move on to the treasurer's report. Hopefully you received the treasurer's report, and Stefan can go into some detail if you'd like.
Yes, good afternoon. I sent this out a little late this afternoon, so if you didn't get it in your email, it's sitting there. We had a pretty good month. We received more money. That's always good. As always, I just break it out what's on the bank statement, which this month went through October 31st. The only activity was $1.13 that we gained in interest. But many of the checks that we wrote out for our first round of grants did clear. So we had an opening balance of $168,869 and a few cents. The ending balance on that statement is $100,713 and some change. And as always, because we meet in the middle of the month, there's some activity from the end of that statement to now. We've had all of the checks clear from the $5,000 checks that we sent out in our grant, so that's good. We had to pay our solicitor way down there on the end. Mr. Treasurer made a boo-boo, and we had to actually write 2 checks because one of them was a little short. And we received $59,979.42 in gaming funds that have been deposited since the end of the month. So as we stand, or as we sit here at this moment, there is $150,093.31 sitting in the bank account for us to dispense as we decide.
Thank you.
What is are we on a December 31st fiscal year? Stefan, remind me. So we'll have the auditors come in and do a formal financial report in January or February?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Did you want to add to that?
Only that auditors don't act that quickly.
No, I know.
We're a calendar year. If we get
Yeah.
it by July or August, I'll be pleased.
Well, they're actually really efficient. I'd be surprised if it would take that long. Such a simple return.
Any other questions on the treasurer's report? Motion to approve the treasurer's report?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. At this time, I'll give the solicitors an opportunity to speak. Do you have anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At our next meeting in December, we should be deciding upon when our meeting dates are going to be in 2022 and place the advertisement in the paper before the end of the year. And we will try this year not to schedule things on Christmas, Rosh Hashanah, or other such occasions. So I will come with a recommendation, or I'll send it to everybody ahead of the meeting. And if somebody sees a conflict with the date, just let us know. In January, we are to reorganize. And the only other matter is you authorized me to put an ad in the paper regarding the emergency services grant. I did so. I've been informed that the email address that's on there is in fact active.
Yeah.
Okay. And do we have I don't mean to get ahead of us because it's on here, but we do have an application. Is that online now also?
It's not online, it's available.
Oh, okay.
So,
I'm sorry, I meant,
the application has been distributed as an attachment, or applicants can request the application and we send it to them.
have we had any such requests?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I'll talk about it a little bit later.
I didn't mean to step on it.
It's still a month under.
That's all that I have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the solicitor?
We're only scheduling 4 meetings for next year, is that right?
No. We're scheduling 12, and if we have to cancel one, we won't violate our bylaws because we're mandated to meet at least quarterly.
Okay.
Yeah, my thinking was we would continue to meet monthly also.
So if we receive notification that we will not have a quorum, we would we be able to communicate that via the website? And what's the lead time that we would have to do that to not be in violation?
We'd also put a note on the door,
Okay.
at least 24 hours ahead of time. So we will be able to react quickly.
Okay. So we would need notification from the members of this authority at a minimum 24 hours ahead of time that we will not have a quorum.
Barring illness, sudden illness or something like that, yes.
And we should have another member in January. hopefully.
Mhm.
So as long as we have 3, we should be able to meet.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you. So old business, discussion of the emergency services grant. I'll just give you a follow-up. As of noon today, we received 9 applications via the email that Stefan is, so that's great. I haven't had a chance to look at them, but we will review them at the end of, after the quarter is over. So we're only going to do this 4 times a year until the money runs out, to make it easy for everybody. The emergency services grant was promoted in the foundation email newsletter, so thank you to Francis for distributing that information. The solicitor also mentioned that he advertised a notice on or around the 15th in the newspaper. The app, I personally sent the app to the Fire Chiefs Association, the Emergency Services Department for Delco, and the Assistant District Attorney Tanner Rouse. I inquired with him and District Attorney Jack Stolzheimer how to contact the police departments, and the Assistant Director Tanner Rouse got back to me and agreed to distribute it to all the police departments. So almost all of the emergency services entities have been touched, with the exception of the canteen and the other emergency services thing that you mentioned earlier this year that helped with the
Citizen Corps?
Citizen Corps.
I think that by writing to the emergency, they're within emergency services,
Okay.
so you covered them.
Okay, fine, good. So I think we've met our obligation of publicizing the grant to all of the entities within the county. We will review and approve these. We will review and approve these in January. So after December 31st, I will put them on a spreadsheet and make them accessible to you, and you can look at them before our January meeting. I'll try and do that on a timely basis. And upon our approval of them in January, we will ask for county council approval in late January at their meeting or early February at their early meeting. And that will be the process going forward until we exhaust the funds, or if we decide to approve another round of funding for that grant. But I want to thank everybody on this authority for their approval of this grant and also with the help of this process. Thank you. Any other old business? I don't, as far as the discussion item, I think we can have a discussion item, correct, if there's any other old.
Sure.
Let's move on to new business. We can have discussion. I want to be mindful of everybody's time as well. We can have discussion of web services respondents to the reissued RFP. If anybody wants to discuss any of the respondents.
It looked like it was unanimous. It's great. Makes it easy. So I will, can I move that you need a motion
Sure, go ahead.
to hire the firm that unanimously achieved our #1 rating? Refresh my memory of their name.
So we'll call that motion to accept the web services bid from Course Vector.
Yes, from Course Vector.
I'll second the motion. Any questions or comments? I just want to comment that we appreciate the bids from the local companies, and all of the bids were excellent, but we just want to be responsible with the funding that we get, and I felt like we got the biggest bang for our buck with Course Vector. All those in favor of Course Vector as our vendor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Course Vector is selected. Thank you. I don't know if we'll have the time for this, but I will turn the floor over to Francis Sheehan about a grant calendar recommendation, and if she has any suggestions for a name for our general grant, or if anyone else thought of a suggested for the name
So-
of our general plan.
So these are my thoughts. We made, I think, a generous disbursement, $75,000 for the youth serving organizations a couple months ago. We have not committed to doing that on an annual basis. That's a discussion we really should have. We've now set up the Emergency Services Fund. We haven't said that's something that we're going to do on an annual basis. And then we haven't made the decision about how we would spend the balance of the funds above and beyond any recommitment to those first two pools. We've just had a discussion about possibly assisting some municipalities with planning grants for some sort of development, trail planning, streetscapes, intersection lighting improvement, et cetera. I think we need to.
Hashtag bus shelter.
Okay, hashtag boat shelter. And I think I would suggest that before we talk about naming a grant program that we haven't even determined the purpose of what it would be, that we gather a little bit more information about what might be involved. So I think, although, for instance, the Riverfront Alliance project that's being discussed may be eligible for federal funds, there may be a piece of what they're talking about doing that isn't. And that whole funding for planning grants, matching dollars, those small pieces that can sometimes delay a community planning project, I think are ideal for an organization like ours that really doesn't have a tremendous amount of money to throw around. I'm also was intrigued in so I could see us having 3 or 4 buckets of funding that we disperse each year, each of which has a different name. But until we agree that we're going to be doing that, the naming is sort of the least of our problems. I was also intrigued by the referral in Kathy and Rebecca's presentation about the historical property inventory, because we've had a presentation about the courthouse in Chester. We had a presentation about the Lansdowne Theater. The Darby Library is on Congresswoman Scanlon's list to get infrastructure dollars. And there may be some other projects like that that also might be of interest to us. So those are, I think we're still in the information gathering stage, and I think the partnership with Kathy and Rebecca and their colleagues at the planning department is a really great opportunity for us to explore some other opportunities. Does that make sense to my colleagues?
I guess my thinking was the 15 grants that we did for $75,000, and we had a focus on families and children, and then I kind of felt bad, if you just want to use a simple word. I met someone from Senior Community Services the other day. I was like, that's a demographic that we didn't serve.
But we could do that. We could say that we want, at our next meeting, we're going to entertain proposals, $10,000 each to Senior Community Services and Surrey Senior Services. I mean, we certainly can do that. There's nothing keeping us from doing that.
Well, I guess what I meant is, I think we wanted to expedite the funding for 2020 with the funding that we had, and we used your organization as a vetting organization to do that. In 2022, my thought was we would have an open application for almost virtually all community organizations and not focus on a specific.
Well, in fairness, at the Foundation for Delaware County, we have a relatively open process. It includes funding for children and families, senior services, community and economic development, and food insecurity. We could decide to have a broad base, a broad range of priorities also. we decided to focus on children. It was the easiest. We could all agree. We achieved unanimity. We moved the money out the door. Super appreciated and needed. No one could disagree. I think we could certainly be broader. If what you're proposing is that going into the coming year, you want to do a broad-based a request for proposals that gives any nonprofit in the community the opportunity to apply. I don't know that I would agree with that. And the reason is that I think the proposal we just heard today, that we could, if we wanted to fund 4 or 5 projects like that, that's $200,000 like that. We're only going to have, based on the numbers that are coming in right now, $200,000 to $250,000 a year to spend. So if we wanted to, say we want to do children again, $50,000. Say we want to do emergency services again, $50,000. That only leaves us $100,000 to $150,000 for the kinds of projects we're just talking about here. So once you spread it out widely, I will just forewarn you, for $1 to $2 million in funds that we provide at the Foundation for Delaware County in our annual competitive round, we get over $5 million in requests. So given that we have, this is just my personal opinion, given that we have a relatively small amount of money with a tremendous amount of freedom with how we spend it, I would suggest we focus in on 1, 2, 3, or 4 things that are important to us, and those are what we do every year.
So then
That's just my personal opinion.
I think I can agree with that. I think that we have and I'm sorry if I'm turning my head towards you guys. I think if we have a bucket of money for community grants, but with a focus. So it could be seniors, it could be food insecurity, whatever we want. And that's open to, say, 20 or 30 nonprofits within Delaware Valley to apply. Not saying that all of them will be awarded that. And then we have these other buckets for the other things within our mission statement. And that could change because I'll talk about in a few minutes, just real briefly, that I did have the first meeting with the consultant. So there may be some things that change.
The meeting with the consultant,
The economic
about coordinating the authorities.
Yes.
Oh, e-consult.
Yeah, e-consult. So,
And they may have some thoughts relative to what Kathy and Rebecca just presented as well. You're absolutely right.
okay. So let's table this for now because it looks like we have 150,000 in the bank. We have 50,000.
But we're going to be, we could grant all that 50 in January based on the number of emergency services provided. The 50, leaving us with 100.
We have 50,000 allocated towards that.
Exactly.
Right. And then we also have to look at our professional services contracts too.
True, good point.
Web services, the CPA. So those are costs that we have, those are costs that we have to look at. So let's table this for now. But I do understand, and I am in agreement with maybe winnowing down a focus for the community-based grants, like the $5,000 amount or something like that. And maybe
if that's what we've decided we want to do going forward.
Yeah.
Can I ask a favor, Stefan? It would be helpful to me to see a budget for the coming year. Just simple. This is what we're paying the web people. This is what we're paying the accountant. Based on the past year, this is what we think we're going to be paying for our solicitor. Just so we have a sort of general idea of these are the expectations and then therefore what is really the balance we have to move out the door.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was my idea too. And I'm sorry, I want to make sure that Ron and Stefan have an opportunity to contribute to this part of the conversation as well. As far as the general grant and the grant calendar.
Yeah, I mean,
Right
I
now we're
just
kind
didn't know the background. I was thinking, well, we just call them the SIGGRA grants.
Okay.
And impact grants, I don't know why we would need a fancy name, not that it's a nice idea, but
Yeah.
you're talking about.
I didn't want there to be confusion with the foundation has their brand.
Our
is
impact grants.
Yeah, no.
I
that's
can
why I
assure
said- I
you
didn't- I
there are
wasn't
other
implying we should
foundations that
plagiarize it.
use that.
Say it again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I wasn't implying that we should plagiarize it. I was just using that as an example.
We would be honored.
Stefan?
No, I think we're on the right track to, clearly determine categorically where we want to spend the money, how much we want to spend, keeping into account how much we have to spend, and be just realistic and transparent when we do put it out there. I mean, we don't want people to apply thinking that, we've got $200,000 that we're going to cut a check for. So I think we're on the right path. Won't be decided today. 4 categories, 5 categories, whether they change annually, is something we have to decide. It doesn't have to be something we decide 4 buckets that will travel forever. Or it could be, slide one in, slide one out. I think like today, we'll just surprisingly maybe discover some need out there that we may not even be aware of.
And the emergency services, I did put on all the responses, first come, first served. So let them know that there's a limit, because there's going to be a lot of response, and we'll do the best that we can to fund as many as we can. All right, we'll get out of here in about 2 minutes. I just want to get feedback from my presentation to County Council about the SIGRA quarterly report. It was overall positive. And Councilwoman Schaefer just asked if the website would allow grant application submission. And I did tell her, right now, the way we have it is, they would have to submit a digital application, kind of like a Microsoft Word application, unless we were
We
talking
should
about
be able to have a fillable
online
Adobe
form.
document.
All right, and I just want to add something else. Michael Lane, he's the grants manager at Delaware County Community College. He sent a communication to us. They created a Center for Equity and Social Justice, and it's housed in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. In fact, they received some funding from the foundation, and he just expressed his interest in receiving, they receiving some funding, and I wanted to get permission to invite him to give a presentation at our next meeting in December.
Sure.
And I think that's it for new business. Any other new business? Any public comment? Yes.
Real quick. Now that we have voted to award the RFP for the website, I have been getting peppered with emails from the various vendors. Do I have authority to let the people know who didn't receive it, that they didn't receive it? And I can let Course Vector know. Who will be doing the follow-up with Course Vector?
I'll volunteer.
Well, Mr. Roots has been very involved in this, but I suspect he's going to be very involved with other things also.
Yes, he is.
I'll work with you, Paul. We'll do it together.
I'll include both of you on the email.
Okay. All right. Any public comment? Any authority comments from any members of the authority? Or
Good
this
meeting. And thank you to our guests who
Yes,
joined us.
Definitely.
Ron, any comments? No. Nothing?
Nope.
I just want to say thank you, everyone. This was a very effective meeting. I appreciate everybody's response and their participation. And I'm excited about the emergency services grant and excited about $150,000 in our bank account. And things are just moving up and getting better for our so thank you. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. We're adjourned. Thank you.